Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we've got an interesting little cartridge comparison for you today. We're going to be taking a look at two cartridges that at some point in time they were considered both a good starter cartridge for someone just getting into hunting. We have the 6.5 Creedmoor, which is more of a modern cartridge, and then old reliable, the 270 Winchester. Let's get into it. For the purposes of this video, we have a 270 Winchester loaded with the 145 grain ELDX. It's not necessarily my favorite bullet ever, but it's the same bullet type. You can find the same type of ammunition loaded for it, so we can get a good comparison between factory ammunition as well as some hand-loaded ammunition. So for today, the ELDX will be kind of the bullet of choice. The 6.5 Creedmoor, which came out in 2008, is a product made by Hornady, made famous by Hornady, and with it came the 143 grain ELDX. This is kind of what this 6.5 Creedmoor was known for and is still known for, is the ability to shoot this high BC bullet at relatively decent velocities, if you could say that. Realistically, you're going to be looking anywhere from 2,700 feet per second to maybe 2,900 feet per second if you have a really fast barrel. But realistically, you're looking right around 2,700 to 2,750 feet per second, depending on the load, if you're shooting factory ammunition and all that stuff. So just taking a look here and comparing these two cartridges, the 6.5 Creedmoor has a water capacity of roughly 51.7 grains, and the 270 Winchester has 67 grains of water capacity. That means the 270 Winchester case is quite a bit bigger than the 6.5 Creedmoor. However, the 6.5 Creedmoor is built to be more efficient and just a more modern cartridge. The 270 is 100 years old. The Creedmoor, it's not even 20 years old yet, so it's still relatively new on the landscape. And then for the bullets, you have the 143 grain and the 145 grain. They're pretty similar bullets. You're looking here, though, that 143 grain is quite a bit longer. And looking at the BCs, you have a BC on that 143 grain of 0.623, and on the 145 grain, we're a 0.536. So the ballistic advantage is going to go to the 143 grain ELDX. Now, you get into something like the AccuBond long range or one of those other high BC bullets, the 270 Winchester will definitely catch up. But in this case, trying to keep it as close as we can, that 143 grain is going to be the more efficient bullet. But now you might be thinking, well, what about us guys that shoot factory ammunition? So I got you covered there. We have the 143 grain Precision Hunter ammo going 2,700 feet per second from the muzzle. This is just the number off of the box. Your rifle might be a little different. 0 to 100 yards as always. At 500 yards, we're 54.18 inches of drop. So quite a bit more drop than the hand loads, and that's just that discrepancy in velocity. And then coming down here to the 270 Winchester, we're looking at the Precision Hunter loaded ammunition going 2,970 feet per second with 45 inches of drop, and then at 1,000 yards, we're 287 inches of drop, which is significantly better than the 6.5 Creedmoor. So if you're going to compare these two, the Creedmoor really benefits from hand loading because you can really push that velocity quite a bit more. But realistically, we didn't gain a whole lot in velocity or in drop for the 270 Winchester going from a hand load to a factory ammo. So in the Creedmoor, you can make a big difference, but even then, the factory ammo in that 270 Winchester still beats the hand-loaded 6.5 Creedmoor. And, well, there's a big discrepancy in those two cases there. So how close or how big of a case do we have to go to get a 6.5 millimeter to compare to this 270 Winchester? So for this comparison, we're going to look at ranges of 500 and 1,000 yards. The 6.5 Creedmoor is kind of a long-range target load, and we're going to be looking at hand-loaded ELDX loads here. So the 6.5 Creedmoor, we have it loaded with the 143 grain ELDX at 2,850 feet per second. Then this 145 grain ELDX and the 270 is going roughly 3,050 feet per second. So at 500 yards advantage goes to the 270. We're looking at 42.4 inches of drop, which is about 3 inches better than the 6.5 Creedmoor. And then getting out to 1,000 yards, it opens up even more, where we're about 19, almost 20 inches difference in bullet drop. So if you're looking for something that's flat shooting, yeah, the Creedmoor does pretty good. But the 270 Winchester, as old as it is still flatter out to 1,000 yards and, well, probably beyond, because it doesn't look like that 6.5 Creedmoor's really keeping up. So advantage there, 270 Winchester. To compete with the 270 Winchester in 6.5, we have to go to something more like the 6.5 PRC. That is just the same bullet, this 143 grain ELDX, but out of a short action Magnum. Now, that 6.5 PRC is going to be going a similar velocity to the 270 Winchester, depending on barrel length, barrel brand. You might have one go faster than the other, depends on your lot of ammunition. There's a few factors that could decide the velocity that's going to come out, but you're going to be right around that 2970 feet per second mark. The drop at 500 yards here, 45 inches again, but we're 43.5 inches. So we're 1.5 to 2 inches of drop difference between the two cartridges, which for this not being a Magnum, it really keeps up with Magnums, especially those modern Magnums that have been coming out. The 270 Winchester doesn't look that bad. And then out at 1,000 yards, which is well beyond what you should be hunting, you're 287 inches of drop versus 264 inches of drop. So yeah, the 6.5 PRC might be flatter out at 1,000 yards, but realistically, when you're shooting steel, you're sitting on a bench with a rear support, you have a good bipod or a good front bag on it, and you're dialing and have all day to shoot. So realistically, that difference in drop, it might make a difference if there's a lot of wind, but the 270 Winchester really keeps up with the times. And that's one thing that kind of surprised me is as you get these good bullets in that 270 Winchester, it is still a viable, awesome little cartridge, whether it's hunting or target shooting. So let's take a look. 6.5 Creedmoor, it's a good round. It's a good starter round if you're shooting things like whitetails, like mule deer, and it's a good target round. But if you're wanting something a little bit more, with a little bit more oomph, that's going to be close to that 6.5 PRC, you can still break out that old 270 Winchester, and it'll keep up just fine. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Go ahead and like and subscribe. Remember to do that, and we'll catch you later.